Hey everyone, thank you for joining our fireside chat. Just give me a second. I've been wanting to share my screen. All right. Shikhil, is it visible?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining our fireside chat. AI meets cybersecurity. What's real? What's hype? Uh, We will be starting the session in the next couple of minutes. And while we wait for a few other attendees to join, I would love to understand on a scale of 1 to 5, if you folks could tell me how excited are you to go back from this session, learning more about AI in cybersecurity. For me, it's a solid 10, but I would love to know from you folks as well. Um, I am not able to see the responses in the chat. Yeah. Oh, thank you, John. It's an 8 for John. Thank you so much. And if you guys could also tell where are you all joining from. I am Priya, community manager at Astra Security, and I am joining from Bangalore. Hey, Ashish. Hey, Swen. Hey, Gajal. So while I was handling the registrations, I could see a lot of people registering from the different parts of the world. We have had people we had people from the US, India, Europe, and Middle East as well. So really excited for the session today. All right. Uh, So before we begin the session, let me give you a quick rundown of all the topics that we will be diving deeper into. First is what is AI's real deal with cybersecurity. Then we will also explore how AI is reshaping threat detection and pen testing. You will also get a sneak peek of our state of continuous pen testing report. And then we will also explore the latest AI-powered attacks tactics to watch for. And then the talk of the town, will AI replace cybersecurity roles? And it will be followed by a live Q&A. Before I introduce you all to the speaker for the session today, let me give you a quick rundown about the 403 Circle and Astra Security. So the 403 Circle is a close-knit, invite-only Slack community of over 150 senior tech leaders. If you become a part of the community, you get access to exclusive events such as AMA sessions, city meetups, and expert-led sessions. I'm going to drop the link to the community in the chat after this. And if you feel like you're interested in joining the community, you can sign up for it, fill in the application form. As for Astra Security, at Astra, we are building a continuous pen test platform that helps over 700 companies continuously scan their infrastructure for security vulnerabilities. We make pen tests a breeze for companies and have vulnerability scanners for web apps and APIs. Well, time to introduce you all to our speakers today. We have Rinki Sethi, CSO and board member, and the former VP and CISO at Bill.com and Twitter. Then we have Shikhil Sharma, who is the founder and CEO of Astra Security, who will be leading this conversation. And he has some really interesting questions he's going to ask Rinki in the session today. Last but not least, very quick housekeeping rules and flow of the event. So we will begin the session by moderator curated Q&A with Rinki, followed by, so we have allocated last 10 minutes for the live audience Q&A. If you feel like you have any questions that you may want to ask Rinki, you can drop them in the Q&A section only. Make sure to drop them in the Q&A section only, so it can the chances of it getting answered, are more. If you have anything, any insights to share, feel free to use the chat box. Drop in your insights, your questions that is off topic. As for the session recording, this session is being recorded and the recording will be made available post the 24 to 48 hours of the session. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. We are so thrilled to have you join this as we dive into this really interesting topic. I will hand over the virtual mic to Shikhil now. Shikhil, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Priya, for that. And again, thanks a lot for everyone who's joined in. And thank you so much, Rinki, for joining in and agreeing to share your wisdom right from the trenches. Thanks a lot.
No, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Perfect. Great. I'm glad. So I'm sorry, but I'm going to be asking a tough question right at the start. And if anyone wants to take a jab at it on the chat window, feel free to go ahead. Are you a coffee person or a tea person?
I'll be honest, I'm actually a diehard chai fan. But because I don't have time to make fresh chai in the morning, I've resorted to black coffee every day.
Oh, wow. Great. I mean, I wasn't expecting that because I've never met a CISO or a security leader who says that I'm not a coffee fan. And that also time of the day depends because it gets harder later post 6 p.m.s. Great. Good to know that we've got a chai person in the house. And if anyone else wants to take a jab at that, feel free to add in your comments. I see John joining in from New York. I'm pretty sure he's starting his day with a coffee. Cool. Perfect. Now on to actual questions. Starting on the this time a little lighter one for real. What does a day in life of CISO look like for you? Especially.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I'm saying especially these days with AI and whatnot.
Yeah, I feel that the CISO role today is so much different than it was just a few decades ago. Even if you think about it, when I started my career in cybersecurity, the term CISO didn't really exist. In fact, cybersecurity wasn't called cybersecurity, it was called information protection, is the team that I joined. And CISOs were really kind of at banks and things like that. Now, CISO is a word that most people, or an acronym that most people understand. And I think it's evolved, right? Even if we look at the last decade or so, security folks were more technical, were more kind of architects, were there to make sure that the technology was protected. And it's really morphed and evolved into a very highly visible business leader role. And many of us as security leaders are leading the charge and transformation around AI and how the company is safely going to use AI because we know it's disrupting every part of the business. And so I think that the CISO role today is very much an advisor to the company on best practices in security, has a team that can help implement and really prioritize how you mitigate risks. So I think it's a very different role. We've seen that the CISO role carries a lot of liability, a lot of weight on their shoulders just around the risks and ensuring that you can articulate risk, communicate risk, that you can partner with the business in meaningful ways.
Absolutely. I concur with that. And I feel that over the last few years that since you're mentioning information protection, that's like really, I mean, I didn't hear about that term, but the fact that finally CISOs have made it to actual boards and decision-making seat, which happens to be in companies' boards, that's really good to see. That's where a company might be saying that, hey, we've got best security posture, 99.9% uptime, ding ding. But If they've got a CISO in their board, then you really know that, okay, they're serious about their security. A follow-up on that would be like, if you could go back to your first 90 days as a CISO, what advice would you give to yourself?
I think what I realized now of my fifth CISO role in, what I've realized is that it's really nobody wants to get into the technical jargon about cybersecurity, not the executive team, not the board, nobody. And that's not the role that we play, right? A lot of what we do is making sure that we can educate around risk. I think that when I think about my first CISO role, a lot of it was if there's a security incident, you want to contain it. If nobody knows about it and no one's heard about it, you've done a good job. That's no longer our role. And if I could go back to my first CISO role and like, I think give myself advice, it's you want to build transparency in your security program and make sure that the key risks that are owned by the business, they understand it. Like your business partners should understand what risks they own in their line of business. They should be able to articulate it clearly. They should understand what they're accepting versus what should be mitigated, and that there should be clear risk ownership across the business. That requires a leader to go and make sure you have great partnerships. You're able to articulate that in the language of the business. And I think the more time you spend to understand what is important to your business partners and how do you articulate those security challenges in a way that is going to like really win their hearts and minds over, that's what you need to focus on in the early days. And that's what's going to help you build a strategy that's really ingrained in the business.
Excellent. I mean, I love that answer because I think it's about, I mean, a lot of times it's very easy to say that it's, I mean, probably we didn't got the budgets or we didn't, the management wasn't on board, but in the end, it's about a lot about explaining them the impact and then, thinking from their side and then explaining it to them. Which is a nice segue to finally our first question around AI. Could you please share a few areas in cyber where you or your peers have invested in AI first solutions and seen results which have been quantifiable in terms of either human hours saved or even business outcomes?
This is actually like a hard question, right? Because I believe strongly that every security leader needs to look at every part of their program and really focus on a rebuild and kind of inventing the program, because AI is disrupting every single part of security, but not just security, right? It's disrupting every single line of business in the company. I mean, the board is asking, how are you using AI to do better business intelligence? How are you using AI so that we don't need to, like, so that we're getting better productivity and we don't need to grow staff to incremental levels, right? So I think every area of cyber for sure is ripe for disruption. I can share like some of the areas that I saw an immediate, like this can drive just exponential productivity for the team. One was around like all of us have to deal with third-party risk. And it's a requirement. There's compliance requirements, regulatory requirements around like third-party questionnaires and making sure you're asking the right questions. And it's very taxing. It's very manual today. I think there's already AI products in the market that are showing kind of just what you can do in terms of productivity gains. And I think this is kind of an area that we've already seen hours saved, where you're seeing people in that function able to do kind of more strategic work, monitoring kind of your third parties and what they're doing, which was kind of something that was a real big challenge because you were focused so much on doing the one-time assessment. So I think that that's where that's one of the very, very early investments I made. I think the other one where I've seen, like we're seeing a lot of things in identity around how you can like really the old ways of doing identity governance, just identity end to end, has been really difficult, really manual. Already you're seeing kind of like gains around AI. And then the third I'll mention is vuln management. When you think about vulnerability management, the last mile of vulnerability management, the efforts that are super manual, that's the tough part. It's not the scanning, it's the prioritization, the deduping, the assigning the tickets, going and finding owners and all of that mess. That's where I've seen AI really, really play a key role as well.
Amazing. And I could totally relate to the last one and I saw that you had this smile on your face because that smile was coming from plight. in the past, where you would have seen like your team members were like, we are security engineers, we aren't supposed to do this. But it's part of the job. But suddenly now there's an army of AI agents where you can like outsource this work too. So that's really good. And on the first bit also that you mentioned, right? I could really relate because we've seen that happen a lot in, I mean, I'm barring out enterprises, but a lot of mid-market and smaller startups also, where uh, customers started to ask, what's your security posture? And suddenly these compliance tech SOC 2 became like the de facto with all your Dratas, printers of the world. And the same thing is happening in AI. Now everyone's asking, like from a customer point of view, the ones who are actually giving their dollars to the business are asking, where in the business are you using AI? So suddenly now boards like, where in the business are we using AI? Not just in our offerings, but throughout. So that's really good to see that, even when customers start asking anything, be it security, be it AI, it surely is heard over any other voice in between the food chain. So that's really something that we're seeing it here. Now, since we're in this space, so I couldn't stop myself from including a couple of questions around AI in pen testing and threat detection. Uh, so we've recently released a state of continuous pen test report, and it mentions, and one of the interesting findings there was that our offensive security scanners flagged about 126% more web and API vulnerabilities than the previous year, which was a massive jump. But at the same time, manual pen tests with the point in time stuff is also catching those deeper and complex vulnerabilities. I mean, there isn't an exact automation or replacement for that yet. So in your experience, how is, I mean, if you've seen it happen, or what do you think, either ways, but how is AI really changing the way we approach vulnerability detection and pen testing as of today?
I think I'm actually really excited about what you and the team are building at Astra, but and I think that AI pen testing is the future, right? I think where we are today with AI and things are to your point, like where we were last year, and the data you just shared is very different than where we are even this year. So you're seeing like massive improvement in the capabilities, and so I think AI really helps with scale. When I think about pen testing and how we've been doing things in terms of building, really doing pen testing with services, you have so much budget, you can only do so much pen testing, and no amount of budget is ever going to be enough for what us as the paranoid security people want to go and execute on. And so I think AI really helps with scale. Now, I think on the depth side, right, that's where I think we still have some room for improvement. To your point, some of the business logic flaws, some of the things that humans are very uniquely positioned to do, I still think we need. But I think AI is going to get much, much, much savvier and is going to start having depth. And I think it's going to be pretty close. We're just not quite there yet. I think like automated scanners are better than ever now at catching misconfigurations. And but the most like dangerous vulnerabilities are still logic based, and they're very contextual. And AI is nuanced around that kind of risk, right? And if you're using only AI for pen testing today, you may still miss some of the kind of human-led testing and things that may matter around the business logic flaws. So I think like we're not quite there, but I think we're going to get there. So I think the future is going to be mostly AI pen testing with some kind of human augmentation.
Wow, perfect. I think I'm exactly on the same page. And one of the things I've also wanted to ask here was that, which I think you answered in part, was that as a CISO, will you completely trust AI done pen test, let's say at its peak, or will you still say that, hey, I mean, because right now, however, uh, I mean, fun story, we've actually, to a good degree, we end up finding vulnerabilities using automation because we kind of loop in all the detections from a pen test into our scanning engines, which is able to scan automatically going forward those type of vulnerabilities. We just do not depend on CV feed for our platform, which ensures kind of the detections are better than the others. But we actually did a pen test for a pretty sizable business, and in there about 70% vulnerabilities were detected by our scanning engine, as it so happened. Uh, and we very transparently show that, hey, this is these are the vulnerabilities which are discovered by our continuous scanning engine, and these are the vulnerabilities that our pen testers came in and discovered. uh, we went into that conversation and we thought that, wow, I mean, we've built something which is detecting 70% of these vulnerabilities which were previously considered as business logic or multi-step chain attacks or whatever reason that automated tools cannot find. But the security the security leader comes in and they're like, I don't trust your pen test because it has so less human driven vulnerabilities. So we didn't know how to defend that, because we thought that we've built something really amazing and he's going to say that, hey, I want this for my regular scanning. So as a CISO yourself, would you trust at its peak, would you completely trust an AI driven pen test alone, or you would always prefer a human in the loop?
I think it's at its peak. I'm going to trust it. And so like I think that here's what's going to happen, right? You're going to have a human in the loop. And you're going to have today, you may even say, you know what, I'm going to have the AI pen test, and side by side, I'm going to do a services pen test, or I'm going to do something to compare it. And you're doing that 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Over time, your AI pen tests are going to get better and better. And you may have a human in the loop. You may stop investing in the services piece. You may have a human in the loop. You may augment on some deeper business logic testing, whatever it may be. But at a certain point, the human in the loop is going to say, this is boring. Like everything looks fine. Or like they're testing and they're finding the same things, and your trust level is going to go higher. And you're going to, at some point, there's going to be that turnover, right? We're not there today, but we're going to get to that point.
Sounds like a plan. I mean, we've seen pen testers complain that, how many times in my life am I supposed to report HTTP headers and clickjacking? I mean, I can spend my time doing much better stuff and more creative stuff. So it's about time that actually even more complex stuff is being done by AI. So yes, now using this as a segue to talk about AI first, but threats, right? So we are also seeing a shift on towards how attacks are evolving. Uh, Traditionally, network misconfigs, vulnerabilities that we were talking about. Now we are essentially talking about complex AI and machine learning models. OWASP has their own top 10 for LLMs. Uh, uh, so threats like prompt injection and data poisoning have become real, right? Even like we've been discovering these vulnerabilities in LLM customers using LLM models and AI deeply in their applications. So there are two concerns that come out of it. First, uh, attackers leveraging AI tools, and the second one is they exploiting the expanded AI attack surface. Which one worries you more and why?
It's such a hard question to answer. I do think like to me, the attack surface is scarier. I think like we know that the attackers are using AI tools. The part that worries me about that is like to be able to keep up with them. We as enterprise need to also adopt AI to be able to protect at the speed that the attackers are using it? And are we positioned with the regulatory requirements and the approvals it takes to get some of these things on board? Are we well positioned to keep up with that? So that's a question in my mind. But that attack surface that you're mentioning, like our understanding of how these new tools are working and how they intersect with each other, and especially as we move into like an agentic future, I think our lack of understanding of how to protect this is like pretty big still, right? And so I do worry about that do we understand what's going into these AI tools? Do we understand what's coming out? Do we understand how to protect ourselves from it? And that is definitely a bigger concern.
Agreed. And then there's an entire piece which always happens, that we've made engineers and developers super productive. Now they are 30% more productive, 50% more productive, writing better code, more scalable code. And I was seeing a post, or I think it was a blog where someone had done actually security analysis on applications created by a very famous no I mean AI first web app and application creating tool. And they said that the application had like almost 50% more vulnerabilities than others, because in the end AI is also being trained on that data which might just be vulnerable, right? So AI, how do we know that, AI is writing secure code? So that becomes, I mean, it falls into exactly what you said. The attack surface is expanding, and most likely the expanded attack surface is more vulnerable than the previous one, because the previous one we had kind of chained it a little and we knew how to secure it, but this one's like expanding left, right, and center. So it's a very crazy world out there at this point. Uh, we're almost at the halfway mark. I'm gonna use this opportunity to actually spice things up a little and ask a couple of rapid fire questions. Are you ready for it, Rinki?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, perfect. Great. So what's that one thing that you absolutely hate about being a CISO?
Um, I hate being asked what keeps me up at night because I'll be honest, I sleep pretty good. And it's like not my life, but it's everybody asks like what keeps you up at night, right? And they think that that's what CISOs do is we stay up at night. And look, we are a paranoid bunch. We do like worry about risks and we try to look at the worst thing that can happen, and that's why we're in these roles. But that I find that question like really frustrating. And it's like you're putting all the risks on my shoulder when really it should be ours as a company.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that answer. And yes, I mean, as everyone can see, you're not taking this call from a basement, which is, and not wearing a hoodie. So clearly, like you're sleeping well and doing your job great. So perfect. On to the second one. If you had $1 billion budget as a CISO, which security tool or type of tools you'd buy, and just after buying, shut them so that they cease to exist?
It's such a tough question. I think like I would really invest in what I believe is the future is around like runtime security. I'd buy all the tools possible to protect everything in runtime. I think that's the future of security. And then yeah, and then shut it down.
Wow. Okay. Great. And what was your first email?
This is so embarrassing because I still use it. And like to my defense, I created this in high school. So, and then I was using it on my resume, and someone who cares about me professionally was like, you need to not use this email. But it was goddessrinky@gmail.com. I think I
Wow.
upgraded myself from a princess to a goddess. And yeah, pretty embarrassing looking back at it now.
Wow. That's amazing. And I mean, was there a reference that you really like? From where did that word come from?
I don't know. Like, I remember back in the day, we used to use AOL Instant Messenger, and I think I probably started with like Princess something or whatever, and just carried it on and probably thought it was really cool. Now I realize it's pretty embarrassing.
Wow. If there are any vendors or people who are actually trying to sell you stuff, I'm pretty sure they're gonna brute force their way into goddessrinky@gmail at Yahoo, and you're gonna see some emails coming in. Perfect. So an easy one now. Would love to know like what do you do when you're a little stressed? And I know that you sleep well at night, but still, like I'm sure there are stressful days. So what's your like go-to de-stress thing to do?
Yeah, I mean the CISO role is extremely stressful, and I think we talked about this at the very beginning, right? No day looks similar. We're facing challenges sometimes that are unprecedented, right? And you're trying to path like really kind of pave new ways and figuring out what to do. And so to me, like one thing I don't compromise on is I exercise every single day. And to me, that's my like stress relief. That's like the 45 minutes to an hour that I get. And so in the morning, and if I skip my morning, then in the afternoon, like I will find time to go and exercise. And I think it's like a really important part, not just for health, but for like the mind as well.
Amazing. Plus one on that. I think that really it's one of those underrated hacks where you kind of I mean I get best of the ideas when you're actually subconsciously working out or thinking, and like your mind is still at that and you're like, oh wow, I should have done this, but it didn't come to me when I was straight up 7 hours in front of the screen. So workouts
No,
are like, one of those things. Great.
totally. I had a neighbor of mine one day. She like went for a walk. She stopped by at my house on the way. She's like, it's really windy. I'm gonna take a break. She came home And then we were talking about something. All of a sudden, she gets up and she's like, "Oh my God, I just found the solution to the bug in my code." And she went and ran home to go and fix it. So, total that
Wow.
resonates with me.
Great. Perfect. So, I mean, you've a little bit about future, right? So you've been, uh, I mean, you've been at unique positions at Bill, uh, uh, X slash Twitter, Walmart. Uh, and from your perspective, I'm like, and over the years you've seen industry grow, right? I'm curious, what area of cybersecurity, according to you, stands to benefit the most from AI in the next 5 years? Of course, I know the answer means like literally everything's up for disruption and it's happening. But I mean, there's always one thing which probably was in the 90s, and now it's going to be like a overhaul and it's going to feel like the new kid around the block.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that a lot of areas are gonna be like so different. If you're gonna make me pick one, and I think there's a lot of innovation happening in the space today in this area. Nothing's quite there yet, but you can see that in like 5 years for sure. It's maybe even sooner. It's gonna disrupt, and I think it's ripe for disruption. Is like the SOC. I think the security operations area, like things have been the same. We've done incremental improvements. We introduced SOAR, we introduced different capabilities, but it just needs an overhaul. I mean, when you think about how you move to like closer to detection and response and how you get closer to those detections and then everything thereafter, I think it's ripe for disruption. And I think like the next gen SOC, then like just how AI is going to like completely morph and change how the SOC looks, but also then like the supporting infrastructure underneath, like your SIM. I mean,
Yeah.
I think security leaders have been like preaching for a long time. We need a new way to do SIM, right? The legacy players like are good, but they're like not scaling. It's expensive. We need a new way to do this. So I think those are kind of the areas I think are like really going to drastically look different. And I think they're going to be game changing for security teams, budget, strategy.
Excellent answer. And I feel that's a perfect uh, segue into giving you a little bit of a shout out, because I completely dig your LinkedIn posts. They are super insightful. So anyone who's not following Rinki on LinkedIn, please feel please go ahead and do it right away, or probably wait for like another 15 minutes and then do it. And this question actually comes from the last post that you had almost a day ago on your LinkedIn. So it was about AI agents for security, and how they will be making their own decisions on behalf of InfoSec professionals. And we all know that AI agents are capable of making their own decisions. Uh, and that's exactly what makes them special, that they are able to think for you. But in a world where security decisions are being made by AI agents, uh, do you think that these agents would be easily manipulated, vulnerabilities which will essentially turn them into onto the dark side?
I think that probably already exists. This is like when we think about AI and like the attack surface again, right? This is what worries me. Like we need to start investing in like and thinking about the ecosystem around how do we protect this kind of thing, because I think it's possible. If we are not thoughtful around how we build these agents, like what access, what permissions do agents have to talk to each other, but then also like what permissions, Shikhil, do you have to talk to a particular agent and so on and so forth, right? I think that's going to all have to be thought of. I know there's some really cool, innovative companies that are thinking about this already. And I think there's a lot of security practitioners that are like, we don't need this today, right? But we are absolutely going to need it in the future. We need people that are thinking about this because I think it's possible.
Absolutely. It just reminds me of a couple of Black Mirror episodes. I mean, when we started seeing those, I mean, when the show started, it everything felt like so distant. But in the last 2 3 years, that AI has become like mainstream. Every Black Mirror episode kind of feels like it's almost like entrepreneurs are considering it as a new business model. Like, hey, this idea was nice in this episode. We should do this. So it's becoming that real. Uh, but onto cybersecurity, right? So do you think AI will eventually And it's a little controversial question, but I would I would love if you could go a little bold on this. So, do you think AI will eventually replace significant portions of uh, human cybersecurity roles? And if so, which roles will get impacted the first?
I don't think AI is going to replace humans. I think it's going to reshape how we operate in cybersecurity. I like this saying that I recently heard, and I'm probably going to butcher it a little bit, but um, I think AI is going to replace the jobs of those who don't use AI.
Oh, wow. That's a nice one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you think like, oh yeah, it's in the distant future, like you're not keeping up because I think to be able to be productive, to be able to learn new skills, you're going to have to leverage the capabilities of AI and scale. And that's what I mean by I think our roles are going to be reshaped, all of us, right? We're going to be leveraging AI and figuring out how we add value on top of that. And so I do think that AI is going to reshape what cybersecurity looks like in the future. I think it's a lot of the kind of like when I think about tier one SOC roles, they're going to evolve into automation engineering, which should actually be exciting because, like, to your point, even around pen testing, like, who wants to do certain tasks, right? It's the more like you want to focus on the sexier stuff, but they haven't been able to because we haven't been able to scale. So I think like when I think about your role is going to change, you're going to have this career path that probably earlier on that you were hoping for in the future. I think like compliance, manual compliance will shrink. But the need for judgment, interpretation, business alignment, that's going to grow even further, right? And that's where I think people are going to be so important to ensure that the human expertise is paired with the machine speed. And I think that's going to be the real future. It's not a replacement, but a reshape.
Super interesting. Yeah, even I love that quote that you said. And even one more thing that I usually, it's a book also, which I often say is that only the paranoid survive. And right now, the paranoid are actually using AI, and they're the ones who are going to be surviving. How do you think that team structures will change? I know you touched that a little when you mentioned about SOC teams, but cyber as a department, it first of all comes pretty late in an organization's journey, depending on where they are. Fintech companies usually start with even the first 10 people, but usually organizations post 50, 100 odd team members, they actually bring in folks in who are who could possibly grow into a CIO role, CISO role, or a security leader role. So I'm curious, and at scale, enterprise security teams look very different. They've got teams managing their DAS program uh, throughout their global teams, and similarly SOC you mentioned, and there's identity team, and then there's a SaaS team and whatnot. So I'm curious, how will do you think there'll be a few sub departments within security teams which will kind of converge, or probably teams would some areas which will become leaner, some areas which will probably become expand a lot. Any thoughts on this?
I like if it doesn't sound too much like sci-fi, like I do think when I think about agentic security, I don't think agents have silos. Like I think they work together and they don't care that I own this. I just kind of see this like agents are going to work together. They don't care who they report to and how they are structured, right? I know that's a fast forward into the future, but I think like structure wise, we're going to see fewer silos in security. I think finally there'll be more platform minded security teams. And like honestly, security will become more integrated. And I think that's what we've wanted. That's what we've been preaching as security practitioners on how do we drive more integration. And so that's kind of where I see the future of cyber going. I think security leaders may own more than just security, right? They may own infra and other pieces. And so that we're already starting to see some of that because a lot of infra and IT is about like it's a lot of it is commoditized and how do you do it securely is the question. And so I think it's going to be interesting. I do see that I think structures will change and be more dynamic.
That'll be great. I mean, I can. I mean, I can't even uh, wait for that to happen. Where essentially I mean, it's an like one person's kind of how we used to trade those Pokemon cards or the trump cards that used to come. They're saying the people are going to be trading AI agents. They're going to be like, hey, I've got these 50 agents that do this thing really good, and I have got these 10 agents that are amazing at this thing. Let's combine them. Let's trade agents so that we can do a better job at whatever we are trying to accomplish. So that'll be super cool to see. I'm actually curious, not a security question, but is there a sci-fi movie that's like your absolute favorite and you rewatch and would like to recommend to everyone?
My original, like if I have to go back to a classic, I loved Jurassic Park. I think that was one of the movies that like in books that got me into sci-fi. I think more recently I love the movie Her. I thought that was amazing. And I think like we're seeing that happen before. It's like we're seeing a lot of it that now it seems like old, right? But like AirPods and things like that that we saw in that movie are all like real now. So I think it was before its time, but that was all about AI if you think about it.
Oh yes, amazing movie, and I think Her is what, about 10 years ago, and
Yeah.
and it felt like I mean, felt like so much into the future back then. But I mean, how many generations actually get to do this? That where they are when they see something sci-fi and they get to live it too. I think we're like kind of lucky in that sense that so much of this we're going to be uh, living it. So yeah, I mean. Rinky, I'm loving this, but we've come to the last question before we open it up for Q&A. One closing question from my side is like we like talked a ton about AI and cyber. Now on to the bottom line question. Uh, what do you think is real and what do you think is just hype when it comes to AI and cyber?
I think the real is like AI is absolutely going to cut down repetitive work and help teams act faster. No question about it. That's the real. That's what we're starting to see today. That's going to be the future. The hype is thinking that AI is going to replace critical thinking or solving security end to end. When you hear like the promise of a fully autonomous SOC or a self-securing cloud, I think that's all vapor. I think if AI is treated as an amplifier, not a replacement, it's going to unlock speed and confidence. So that to me is the hype versus real.
Amazing. Love that. Great. Thank you so much, Rinki, for doing this. On to a number of questions that have come our way. So uh, okay, I'll just go in the order they came in. So the first one is from someone anonymous, but they're asking, in your experience, what are the top three non-negotiable SOPs every employee should follow to maintain cybersecurity hygiene within the organization?
Every employee. I think if I had to pick three, I would say, and this is easy to say, but I think that like don't bypass identity controls. Like, make sure that you're following that's for your own safety. I think we always train people. I remember back even like 15 years ago when I started my career in cyber, I remember we used to say that like if something looks off, like trust your instinct, it probably is. And rather than like just deleting an email that looks like phishing or whatever, report it immediately. It helps protect the entire organization. And so I think that still sticks even today. And I remember we used to print on mugs and things like, here's the email you should contact and here's what you should do. So if you see something suspicious, report it. It's every employee's responsibility to do that. And then if last, I think it's like, don't install or connect things without approval. I know it slows things down, but like you'll accidentally put malware on your machine and things like that. And again, it's going to put not just your own machine at risk, but possibly others as well.
Uh, Absolutely. I think those are one of like amazing points which I think anyone and everyone can follow, regardless of like where they are in the organization. And I think these are very small things which kind of have a huge impact when you actually look back a breach. It's usually not the complicated stuff. It's the simple stuff which could have been done, just hygiene stuff which possibly started the chain. Uh, Perfect. So on to the new one. So Kajal asks, she's asking, how do you see AI transforming the threat intelligence landscape?
It's really interesting. There's like some really innovative companies that are coming out around this particular just this particular space. And I think that we're going to see a lot more like how do you really kind of like take how is AI turning threat intel from kind of like a static feed into a real-time dynamic engine? Like I think about like back in the day when we used to say when I was in a prior role at Palo Alto Networks, it's like threat intelligence, the value is not in the consumption of threat intel, it's in the value of action. But yet, like there was so few companies that were providing threat intel in an actionable, automated way. So I think like what AI is going to change is like signal over noise. How can we shift through like millions and millions of data points, log, like darknet chatter, social channels, to really proactively seeing an attacker infrastructure spin up or behavioral trends emerge. I think we're going to get context at speed. Like it's not just about saying that here's a bad IP. It's like, here's a bad IP. Here's why it matters. Here's the assets in your environment which are being targeted. So you're going to see kind of that kind of contextualized uh, info at like scale and speed, and it's going to make it so that you can have more of a human in the loop saying, okay, yeah, go fix that for me, that sounds real, versus like seeing a threat intel alert and then going and really digging into it and seeing if like whether it's valid or not. You're going to be able to have all this context. It's going to save hours. And then I think just like even around like personalized intelligence, like I think it's going to be around like threat intel that's tuned to your particular environment, not just generic threat intel. So like, I don't want to get a CrowdStrike alert that it's going like, that there's kind of a crash if I don't have CrowdStrike in my environment. Just tell me what I need to know and what I need to do about it.
Perfect. Yes. And I feel that's the part. I mean, that's the reason why a lot of people ask you that, you're sleeping well, you're doing well, because I think this is exactly what's time consuming, because this is just busy work. It's not probably actual work for a lot of security teams. And I think as vendors, like I speak for them, because we also like talk to and sell to folks like yourself. We've also, I mean, learned that it's not about telling that here, hey, I'm finding the most number of vulnerabilities for you. Probably it's about, hey, I'm telling you that these vulnerabilities that I found, how they impact your environment, and this is what exactly needs to be done as of today. It's not, I mean, if it comes to security vendors, they would just want engineering teams to just focus on security and not build anything, which isn't true, which cannot happen. On to a question by Anil. He's asked, how do you prioritize critical versus urgent meetings from importance perspective?
Wow, that's a very different question.
Yeah.
So I think like when it comes to like you kind of have like a prioritization matrix in your head, right? And when I think about meetings during the day as a leader, right? Or even as an IC, like you have meetings that you might have one-on-ones that are either focused on your career development, or it might be, hey, I have a one-on-one with somebody that's like, I need to give that, maybe it's with your boss and you need to give them updates on what's going on. You may have some kind of agenda, or you might have meetings that are like, okay, incident review or architecture review. To me, the way that I prioritize things, it's like, what's going to move the needle for the business the most? Those are important. What trumps that is if there's an incident or something absolutely critical where it's like, you need to drop everything. And then I think the career and like more of that personal type meetings that you have, I think those are really important. So sometimes those get deprioritized in the moment, but they shouldn't get deprioritized overall, right? You need to make sure that you make room and time for that. But that's kind of like, I'm making it very simple. I know that our work days are much more complex than that, but that's kind of the lens I apply, right? I also think like ourself, like, we talked about like mental health and we talked about what do we do to stay sane. And sometimes you look at your calendar and you're like, do I need a 30-minute break or do I need to have that meeting? And if you sometimes feel like there's a break that needs to happen and that's better and that meeting can wait, those are decisions we make, right? So I think like, I like to say I like want to prioritize my meetings based on outcomes, not fire drills, but like in our line of business, that's not how that plays out.
Interesting. Yeah, a little out of the pace question, but I mean, I got a couple of tips out of it. Cool. So Harsh asked an interesting question. He says that can AI pen testing disrupt conventional pen testing in terms of costs? I'm going to expand that question and say that any security tool, because I'm sure you've made buying decisions worth millions, right, across your journey. So do you feel that, I mean, like vendors are also going to be like having to go on price wars because of AI?
Yeah, like yes. I mean, I think like the services business is so expensive, right? And pen testing is highly like it's a very human driven a very human driven services like business, and it's expensive. I think we're still going to need that. And we talked about like still needing humans to do pen testing. I think regulations, I think compliance requirements are going to require pen testing done by humans, right? I think it's all the things we're not able to do. It's the scale of pen testing we need to be able to do where these tools come into play. And I think it's going to be a fraction of the cost to what humans can, to what we pay like humans to do. So absolutely, it's going to disrupt. But I think the problem is big enough that we're going to still need both. We're going to need the services and we're going to need the AI pen testing. And I think, and even in the AI pen testing, I think it's like, the one of the most interesting things is there's not just one vendor in this space, there's many, and I think that's like a testament to how important and how needed AI pen testing is.
Absolutely. Perfect. So there's this one more question that came in. I mean, it's an interesting one, though I feel there's no definite answer to that. But the person's asking, even the attackers will use AI, and once they find vulnerabilities slash gaps, they may exploit an identity to gain privilege access. Interestingly, this identity could be human or non-human, right? That's something that I'm adding. How would you even find these gaps? It's a yeah.
I think there are people innovating in this space. This is already happening.
Okay.
I just heard a use case for an AI feature that was released in a product where identity wasn't built in the right way, and an attacker was able to leverage that. And I think that this is already happening. I think there's people thinking about how to solve these problems. The problem is we're releasing AI features for like business enablement before we're thinking about the security repercussions of it. And this is why I think we need to be investing in that ecosystem to ensure that we have the right protections. Because I think to the question's point, I think we're behind right now.
Yes, and that's every shift ever, including the Web3, which was built on the principles of security and decentralization. Still, crazy hacks happened in that space too. So whenever a new shift happens, I was just talking to someone yesterday, and I was saying that hey, sadly, security is always an afterthought, and that's why companies like us and industry like us keeps growing. So I mean, we live another day. So I think this might just be one of our final questions. What's the average cost organizations face? This is actually by Anil. So what's the average cost that organizations face if they need to shut down everything when a particular cyber attack happens? Do they like take any legal actions against their SOC teams? Yeah, I mean, this could possibly, if you've seen something like this happen uh, in your experience.
I've seen legal action being taken against CISOs. And I think this goes back to transparency, which we talked about at the beginning. Remember, like before, like security issues, like you bury them, and if nobody hears about them, you security team, you've done a good job. Yes, right. Those days are totally gone and behind us. Like I think transparency is key. I think we're learning as a security industry too. It was sad for me to see kind of some of the liabilities coming to security teams when like we're trying our best and trying to report things in the best way we know. But I think now with some of the SEC and some of the regulatory, at least in the US, I think it's going to be very, very important to just be as transparent as possible, and share what's going on. And that's where you can start avoiding liability, bring your legal teams along. I haven't seen the SOC being like going after, like I haven't seen that happen yet. I haven't heard of that happening. But again, like security leaders, we have seen that.
Wow, that's Yeah, I mean, it's not good to see that when that happens, because especially when you know that like security leaders are already like they're doing their best with whatever resources they have. I mean, it's very similar to, I mean, for ethical reasons aside, we never see a CEO or a business leader uh, get in a legal trouble because the business wasn't successful. So it's a very similar thing. If a security program wasn't successful, or there was a lapse due to some reason, it's not necessarily a security leader's fault. So final question, because I think the person's mentioned, can we please take this with a wink? So I'll just ask that. Abhinav, this is by Abhinav. So how can AI systems be dynamically designed to ensure continuous compliance with rapidly evolving regulatory frameworks, your GDPR, CCPAs, HIPAA, or industry-specific standards? And what critical considerations must organizations prioritize to balance innovation with legal and ethical obligations of using AI systems, designing these, and working with these compliances?
I think like AI systems can't be bolted onto compliance. They need to be built with it in mind. And so I think the most effective organizations are treating compliance not as a box to check, but as a living integrated part of their AI life cycle. And a lot of these companies you're seeing are creating like AI committees. They're talking about like every aspect of AI that bounds beyond security. But I think the way that I think about it is, one, like you embed compliance into the AI pipeline itself. Like just like we shifted left in security, we need to shift left in compliance. That means like privacy impact assessments at model design time, automated policy enforcement during data ingestion, and real-time auditing that's built into the model outputs, not after the fact. Using AI to manage AI compliance, we talked a little bit about that. But like, how can we use AI to help interpret the changing regulatory text? In fact, we were using AI to do this already, right? Like, tell me what the changes have happened between this version of this and that version of that, or since last year in the regulatory landscape. And you can then monitor for drift in data usage or model behavior. And I think about it as like almost like compliance observability, like watching how your models evolved, and making sure that they don't accidentally cross a regulatory line. Maintain traceability and explainability, make sure that you have like data lineage and access transparency, and that you can like trace the data and how your model is using it. And then of course, like prioritizing ethical design alongside legal design. I think we're at an interesting time where you need to like balance innovation with like compliance, security, privacy, legal, ethics all built in. And if we can't like think about that right from the beginning, I think we're going to slow down and like disable the business.
Absolutely. Sounds good. We've got 2 minutes. Can I just ask you one final question? Because it's by Krishna Pandey, one of my favorite people, one of the security leaders in Xerox. So he's asking, and I feel that that the CISO bit that you mentioned kind of triggered that. So he's saying that with so many AI use cases and solutions working together, who is going to be responsible for any security misses by the AI solutions? He's saying, is it going to be product company, CISO, board, or control owner?
It goes back to my point. Like, I think you have to be able to there's certain things that security team I think owns, right? And it's monitoring of security issues. It might be like assessment of the tools that the owners are using. But at the end of the day, you need to clearly communicate, here's what the risks are to the business and what we're doing. We're not the gatekeepers in every aspect. It's our job to like communicate, escalate risk, make sure it's documented, make sure it's accepted or that it's not accepted, and that we go and ensure that there's good transparency and accountability around risk. So it's going to depend. But if you build a program, I think, where there's clear accountability around risk, then I think it's the person who owns the risk is the person that's going to be accountable for it. And so I think that that's the way to think about it. So it could be anybody in the company. But if you're like holding a risk register that's like thousands of rows long, and then you're like not communicating it, there's not transparent, for sure the security leader is going to be like, hey, you're responsible for communicating these things, and like yet nobody knows about it and it's sitting in a document. So what were we supposed to do about it?
Perfect. Sounds good. And I really like that example. Great. With that, we've come to an end, and I thought that we're just 10 minutes into it. It was super insightful. Thanks a lot, Rinki. You've been the insights that you brought in. Even we got to know a little bit of a personal side of yours through those rapid fire questions, which was super insightful. And I'm glad to know that you're getting full sleep as a CISO. And I hope that every CISO also gets the same. And thanks a lot for doing this. And yeah. Wishing and thanks a lot for everyone who joined in. Yeah, anything that Rinki you'd like to say as a final words?
No, it was great doing this with you, Shikhil. Thank you so much to you and the Astra team for having me. It's been an honor.
Perfect. Great. Thanks a lot, Rinki, and thanks a lot for everyone joining in. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Take care.